Good morning, Susie.
Carol, nice to meet you, and thank you so much for joining us. You know, Hamid, you really chose the right topic to kick off your series because everybody is talking about the supply chain crisis, and every day there are headlines of new problems with the crisis. And so it seems like the news cycle has caught up with what both you and Carol have been dealing with for a long time. Carol, let me begin with you. How is this logjam impacting UPS?
Well, Susie and Hamid, hello, everyone. It's great to join you today. And, we're in the small package delivery business. So when we get a package, we get it delivered. Our on-time delivery is 95% or higher. So I'm super proud of our team's efforts to deliver around the world 2% of the world's GDP every day. And in the United States, 6% of the US GDP every day. But clearly with the pandemic, there was a step change in demand. We were flooded with volume that we didn't expect to see until 2023. So a year ago, we had to hire 40,000 people into our network to handle that demand in the face of COVID and keeping everyone safe. And I must say, I'm really proud of our team because they've done a really nice job of managing through it. But the supply chain issues are real. If you go upstream, so not downstream, which is where we play, but if you go upstream from raw materials to manufacturers, so much of that outside the United States, then flowing to the United States, you see it really jammed up. And I'll make that real for you. In the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach, where 40% of all containers flow, we have hubs. We're ready to take in containers. These containers are drop shipped and delivered to us by a third party. Today, we're only about 70% of capacity at what we could take because there aren't any drivers to drive the containers from the ports to our hubs. So all hands on deck to try to get more people driving those 18-wheelers to get those containers moving off the ports and into the hubs so the packages can be delivered.
So it sounds like you're actually in better shape than we might have expected. You're well prepared for this crisis. How about you, Hamid? What would you say are the pain points at Prologis right now?
Pretty much everywhere. We're in a tough position of trying to meet the demands of our customers. And we're working around the clock to do that. But we need to bring on new capacity because I think this new world is going to require a lot more inventory along the system. Really, Carol talked about the demand coming back very quickly, but there was another thing going on, which is that supply got disrupted at the beginning of COVID. So you had to fill up this hose from the manufacturer to the consumer, and it just takes a long time for the hose to fill up and the water to come out the other end. So that's the challenge. And unfortunately, these kinds of capacities that can't come on instantaneously. It takes time. You need to go buy land, buy buildings and all that. We're in a fortunate situation that we have an incredibly large and well-located land bank. So we can build another $20 billion of real estate just based on what we have. But that alone is not going to do the trick. This problem is going to be with us for a while.
Well, help us understand a little bit more the issues here, because during the pandemic, just about everyone looked at companies like UPS or FedEx or Amazon as miracle workers because you kept our economy open. Whether you were delivering groceries or vaccines to our doorstep and everything on time, everybody got what they needed. Now people are kind of puzzled, a little bit angry that what's happened. They don't know if they're going to get all the presents they want to give to their families for Christmas. How did the system break down, Hamid?
Well, the demand came back much quicker than anybody thought. Remember those charts about 40% unemployment and all that in the first couple of weeks of COVID? So demand just came back with a vengeance, but the employees didn't. And that's where the problem is. Carol said it really well. It's tough to get the capacity to handle all the demand. And by the way, people were sitting around at home, not traveling. Cash was building up in their bank accounts. And all of a sudden they're flush and they want to have a great Christmas after 2 years of being cooped up. So pretty much everything that could go wrong or right happened all at the same time.
Carol, what surprised you the most when the situation just turned on a dime?
Yeah. So, I'm an old finance person. And if you think about what companies love to do is to optimize working capital. So many manufacturers went to just in time inventory. And pre pandemic, that worked pretty well. It was very effective. But when the pandemic hit and everything shut down, including manufacturing, and then the economy started to open and the demand, as Hamid said, jumped. Well, that just in time inventory didn't work anymore. And so I think what companies are doing now is thinking about, I need just in case inventory. So I suspect what we're going to see around the world is working capital models are going to change pretty dramatically, which is great for Prologis because you're going to need space for all that stocking inventory to make sure companies don't run out of stock again. But I think all of us have had a big wake up call. All of our companies have risk management programs, and we review our risk management programs with our boards, and we talk about how we're ready for something that could come our way, be it a cyber attack or even something like the bird flu. But none of us had I don't think, gone through this table exercise of what would happen if a worldwide pandemic occurs. And we've now changed our whole approach to risk management, or really thinking about those black swan events, those events that none of us think could happen, because we've learned that they do. And you've got to be ready to act. My biggest takeaway through it all is put your people first. Our number one job was to make sure that our people were safe. We knew UPSers were essential workers. We wanted to continue to deliver the essential goods and vaccines and everything to keep people alive. But to do so, we had to keep our people safe. And we did just that, I'm proud to say, because it was a mad scramble at the beginning, but we were able to manage through it.
And it sounds like, and it's still going on, but do you see, Carol, that this is a temporary problem, that there is a quick fix in this, or is this just the new reality and we're going to have to get used to it and adapt?
The supply chain, to Hamid's point, is not going to clear up for a while. And it's just not. There's a demand capacity imbalance. As we head into the holiday season here in the United States, is I think about the demand versus the capacity. There will be demand for 5 million packages per day, more than the capacity of all of us in the small package delivery network. So my advice to anyone who's in the holiday shopping mode: shop early. Get your holiday gifts purchased now.
Well, looking beyond Christmas, Hamid, do you see the acute problems that we're going through right now? When does it come to an end? Are you thinking early 2022, 23, later?
I think it's going to take a while. If I were going to take just bet on a date, I would say probably middle of 2023, end of 2023. I think actually it's going to get worse, because a lot of people that already are talking about the logjam over Christmas are going to experience it, and they're going to change their consumer habits, and we don't quite know how. They may go ahead and we may have the toilet paper issue like we had. Everybody rushed out and started buying toilet paper. That affects demand in unpredictable ways. So we don't quite really know, but the short-term problem, I think, is going to be with us through 2023 almost. I think the longer-term issue, which is really what our company is focused on, is how do we bring on capacity in places where people are. It's pretty easy to bring on capacity in the middle of the country when there are no consumers. But looking out our window in San Francisco or New York or Chicago or these places, how do you build these facilities that are going to hold all this inventory that's going to insulate us from these shocks? And by the way, these shocks are not COVID. We've had weather events that have happened during this period of time. We've had a ship tip over in the Suez Canal and basically clog up that route. So the world is just getting less and less predictable. And again, these supply chains that were built for perfection, that all works. Engineers are really good at knowing that. If you give them the conditions, they'll make something that works to perfection. But boy, if the input parameters change, then it's a whole new ball game. And what that means, as we guess, we don't really know, that we're going to need 10, 15% more inventory in the supply chain. Well, that means 10, 15% more buildings or more efficiency through buildings. It takes a long time to get that delivered.
Right. And the statistics I've seen, Hamid, you probably know better, but that warehouse availability is basically sold out. And you were just talking about adding more capacity. Where are you going to do this? Because a lot of communities don't want to have a big warehouse in their backyard.
That's a good point. You want to click, you want your stuff there the same day, but you don't want trucks running around. I think there are multiple solutions to this. I think one of the reasons people don't want warehouses in their neighborhood is that, there's diesel, there's fume, there's traffic congestion. Well, I think over time, some of those issues will be addressed with autonomous, with electric vehicles, with things that are cleaner, things that can run at off hours of the night. Carol would know more about that. So I think those are really long-term solutions. But at the end of the day, today, what we can do is densify sites, maybe go multi-story, take some property types that were maybe former retail, former office, and convert them to logistic facilities. We got to do pretty much everything we can. All the parking lots are getting converted, parking structures. So we gotta. There's no one solution. We gotta look many different places.
Right. Carol, you said a moment ago that this whole thing that's been going on was a wake-up call for your team. As you look at the whole logistics, shipping, that whole paradigm, do you see a redesign? Do you see a paradigm shift? What are you picturing looking ahead?
We're 114 years old as a company. What got us here isn't going to get us to where we need to go. Principally because our customers are changing, our competitors are changing, and the rate of change is accelerating. So it isn't so much the supply chain jam that's influencing our need to shift. It's really the fact that our customers are changing.
Right.
So we used to be singularly focused on the shipper experience, and we measured our on-time delivery, and that's how we measured the customer experience. Mm-hmm. Now, with 60% of our deliveries going to residences, we are focused on the end-to-end experience, shipper to recipient. Because if a package goes away, the recipient is yelling at UPS. They're not yelling at the shipper, be it Macy's or Kohl's or whoever it may be. So we're really focused on digitizing that experience. We have 16 customer journeys that we've kicked off to make it a better experience end to end. And we're also leaning into technology in ways that we never have before, because automation is key to remaining competitive from a cost perspective. So I could go on and on about what we're doing from an automation perspective, but it's kind of cool actually, because we're bringing robotics into our 114-year-old company, which is pretty fun.
I'm going to follow up a little later in our conversation on that, but I want to also circle back to what you said a moment ago about inventory management. And I know you're talking to your customers constantly. What are you hearing from them about the pros and cons of the current just-in-time inventory management? Do you see them changing that? And how crucial is it to make some kind of change?
Yeah, no, customers are talking about just-in-case inventory. They're talking about building safety stock, and they're talking about nearshoring, which is pretty exciting. Moving their sourcing from Asia to closer to home. Sadly, the restrictions in the United States are still pretty tough to build manufacturing plants in this country, but there are countries that are closer to the United States that could actually be suppliers to many of the sellers here in the U.S.
I'd like to talk also to both of you about another pain point that we're hearing a lot. It's about labor shortages. And I know, a number that I just saw this week is that in the US, there's a shortage of 80,000 truckers, but not at UPS. I understand, Carol, that you've got enough truckers. I don't know, what did you do that you are well stocked with truckers? Tell us the secret to your success.
Well, we've got a really great workforce. In the United States alone, we have 458,000 workers. Worldwide, over 540,000 workers. In the US, 75% of our workforce are covered by some sort of a collective bargaining agreement. Our people are well paid. And I think that helps. But more
it sure does. Yeah.
It helps. But money isn't everything. More importantly is that you can create a career here. You can start as a driver or a part-time person in one of our sorting operations and end up running the company. We,
Mhm.
for the most part, promote from within, and I'm really, really proud of that. And people who are looking for careers, not just for a job, but for careers, know they can come to UPS, and those careers are available for them.
Hamid, how about from you? What are you finding that you have to do to keep your best employees? We hear all the time about these talent wars that you can go down the street and get paid more. Is it bigger paychecks like what they're doing at UPS? Is it flexible hours? Is it something else?
My philosophy is that pay should never be a discussion. You should pay people market and better than market if they perform better than market. So pay
Mhm.
should not be, that's table stakes. That's how you get to the conversation. I think the key is what I said earlier in one of the videos. It's culture. You got to have a place where people feel good about showing up for work. Now, we're in the fortunate position that we only have 2,400 people around the globe. Yeah, we have $180 billion of assets, but only 2,400 people.
Mhm.
That's a much simpler problem than Carol's problem. She has to deal literally with hundreds of thousands of people. But we care about our customers' problems. So her problems eventually become our problems. And about 4 or 5 years ago, way before all of this, we embarked on a program called the Prologis Community Workforce Initiative. And our goal is to train 25,000 high school grads for logistic jobs. How do you drive a forklift? How do you unload a truck? How do you deal with all this increased technology and automation that's taking place? So those are going to be career jobs. They're going to change from just moving boxes around. And the supply chain for that talent hasn't really been built. And we're doing our part to build that. And, we didn't think about this when we designed this program. We were just responding to customer problems. 4 years ago, they were saying, problem number 1, 2, 3, 4 is labor. This is not news. I thought that problem would go away after COVID happened, but it just got accentuated. So this, again, just like facilities, takes a long time for this to respond. But we're putting a lot of resources into this program.
Let's see what our audience wants to ask you guys, the questions that they've had so far, and then we'll come back and continue this discussion. Tracy, you've been collecting the questions. What do you have for us?
I have, and they've been coming in, and we've just put up the QR code here in San Francisco. So if you are interested in asking a question live in San Francisco, you just put up your phone and it will click in and it will come to my iPad. It's pretty snazzy. And so we're getting some from online. I've got a couple here I'd love to share with you. And both Carol and Hamid touched upon these, but maybe if we could dig in just a smidge more would be great. What innovations are you seeing to combat the current supply chain challenges today?
Carol,
why don't you take that? Because you were talking just a moment ago about robotics and all the tech stuff you're doing. And then Hamid, you chime in too.
Well, we've had to change our operating model first in many instances. For example, due to COVID protocols in certain Asian airports, to avoid having our pilots thrown into COVID camps, which you don't want to do, we're double crewing. So these big 747 freighters that we fly around the world, we put two crews on, so no one ever deplanes. So we can keep the planes just moving and never having to deplane. That's an investment, as you can appreciate, but it was the right thing to do to keep the planes moving. We've changed our operating procedures here in the United States to eliminate the need for signatures, so we could keep, our package drivers moving, continuing to deliver all the packages that they deliver every year. So that's a big piece of the way we're dealing with it. But then we're using technology. Think about vaccines. I'm so proud to be delivering vaccines. By the end of this year, we will have delivered over 1 billion vaccine doses. And we use technology to enable those deliveries to be effective. In other words, 99.9% on time. And the technology that we use is a special label that has a battery inside the label so that we can track that package throughout the network. We have a control tower that we stood up to watch that package so that we never lose it, because these vaccines are precious. We don't want to lose those vaccines. And oh, by the way, many of them have to be temperature controlled. So we manufacture dry ice that goes along with the package so it gets to the dosing center safely. That's just an example of a change we've made.
It's a great example. Hamid, what are your thoughts on this question of technology?
So technology is essential. I mean, about 4 or 5 years ago, we started a group called Prologis Ventures, and we started going around and trying to identify the needs of our customers. And then by virtue of being here in Silicon Valley and close to a lot of innovation, not exclusively here, but a lot of it is here, we've now invested in over 30 companies that are really essentially in the business of helping our customers in a variety of ways, fleet management, load balancing, all kinds of things. So the old ways are not going to work, and we're not going to be able to just replicate what we have. We need to get more out of what we have, and the key to that is technology. And this may be a good time to bring on a related topic, because Carol touched on it, and that's robotics. The narrative, unfortunately, is that companies are bringing in automation and robots to get rid of people. They're not. They're bringing those on because they can't get the people, and they need to get the people that are there more productive. So it's really a way of leveraging your human capital, and we're seeing that all around. And in a way, Carol's problem is more difficult because she's got to execute it across a big array of people. But in our way, our problem is pretty difficult too, because we don't have one customer. We have 5,500 customers, and they do all kinds of things differently in all different parts of the world. And this business was never built for an integrated solution. UPS is actually integrated, but most of the industry is either in the business of ships, trains, boats, trucks, warehouses, all the different pieces. And to bring all of this together to solve the problem for the customer, that's where the challenge is.
Mm-hmm. Tracy, what else do you have from our audience?
Great. Just one more, and then I'll hand it back to you. Okay. Today's distribution centers seem to be more centered around consumers and consumption rather than around companies and manufacturing. How has this disrupted and/or changed your supply chain strategies?
Since it's about warehouses, I'll take a stab at it, and then Carol, maybe you can pitch in. This is not a new thing. I mean, manufacturing requires warehouses, but those warehouses are called containers. Nothing sits around at a manufacturing plant. It comes out of the plant, goes in a container. Container is the warehouse, gets on a ship, on a train, or whatever, and gets to a port of entry, usually. Then that's where the fun starts. So getting those containers deconsolidated and the right things to the right stores or to the right online channel, that's where the difficulty of the process is. And this process started maybe a decade or two ago. Warehousing and logistics is much about consumption than production. And that mind frame would have been very different 50 years ago.
Carol, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, we run a small freight forwarding business, so we are a broker that arranges for the air cargo or the ocean cargo that ships the containers that Hamid mentioned. And one of the dynamics right now is working through the demand supply equation, and it's crazy. We've never seen an environment like this. Pre-pandemic, the cost of a 40-foot container, we would charge maybe $1,200 for a 40-foot container. It's peaking out now over $8,000 per 40-foot container. So those manufacturers who have to pay that money, is like, I'm sure they're wondering how they're going to manage through that dynamic. And we're wondering about that too, because we have to manage that next year and the year after and the year after that. So it's interesting.
Okay. By the way, you know how efficient she is, Susie, because most people pay $20,000 to $25,000 for what Carol pays $8,000 for. So she's getting a good deal.
Well, we want to know more about what's going on inside UPS. As Hamid said, this whole series is about innovators and leadership. So we'd like to just focus in a little bit on UPS. You became CEO, Carol, a year and a half ago, and it was right in the middle of the whole pandemic. And I'm sure in our audience, they've heard a lot of the things that you've been doing and saying and what have you. But it looks like you're already getting some results. Your earnings that came out yesterday were solid and better than expected, whether we're talking about profits and revenues. All your business segments topped the forecast. UPS stock up yesterday, but double since you came in a year and a half ago. So tell us a little bit about where you're taking UPS. What's your vision?
Well, our vision is better, not bigger. And by that, that means optimizing the assets that we have and leaning into the customers that value our end-to-end network. And this means sweating the assets and identifying areas of growth and making sure that we are so sticky that the experience is so good that no one ever wants to leave that. And I'll make that real for you. So one way that we drove the results, and thank you for your nice comments there. One way we drove the results yesterday is leaning into small and medium-sized businesses because they truly do value our end-to-end network. And we've seen tremendous growth in this customer segment, 6 quarters in a row of outpaced growth. We're also leaning into healthcare logistics. We'll be a $10 billion healthcare logistics company by 2023, on our way to be a $20 billion healthcare logistics company. And we're doing it by really thinking about how we allocate capital differently than we did in the past. For example, when we in the past needed capacity, we would build square footage and we would buy more planes. I looked at our square footage and I said, it's not optimized. It's not optimized. We knew that our customers wanted Saturday delivery as an example. So we said, okay, we can just open up the facilities that we have and deliver from them on Saturday. No additional capital, but we can meet the customer where the customer wants to be met. So we, as of this week, now cover 90% of the US population with Saturday delivery and pickups for commercial and residential customers. And it's working. You know, last Saturday we had 6 million packages that we delivered. So that was a really great example for our team about how you think about capital allocation differently than we would have done so in the past. And declare who we want to be. Yeah.
You know a lot about capital allocation, all those years of being chief financial officer at Home Depot. In fact, you spent 25 years of your career at Home Depot. Is there anything else that your experience with that company is influencing the decisions and strategy that you're doing now with UPS? Just give us 1 or 2 really good examples.
Oh, I was so fortunate to work with the founders of Home Depot, Bernie Marcus, Arthur Blank, and Ken Langone. And they taught me the power of the inverted pyramid, where the leaders are at the bottom of the pyramid because we bear the weight for the actions that we take and the decisions that we make. We bear that weight so that we can free up our people to take care of the customer. And I have been laser focused on that because we had a different kind of pyramid here at UPS. And I flipped it this way. And it's really starting to pay huge dividends because, to Hamid's point, it's all about people and culture. And if you put people first, they will do amazing things. And our team is certainly doing that.
Hamid, UPS is one of Prologis's biggest customers. What do you think of the changes so far that you're seeing at UPS and what Carol's doing?
I'm actually just in awe because this is taking a 100-plus-year-old company that was probably in the business of carriages going around. I don't know, probably something like that, or really basic trucks, and really bringing it into the most challenging vortex of the global economy and doing it very quickly and delivering really good results at the same time. So I don't want to be a standing IR department for Carol, but she's done a remarkable job. And sometimes it really takes an outside perspective to do that. I mean, it's a proud company, a lot of traditions, but I can see it in the way we're interacting with the company. It's much more agile than it used to be, and you can see it in the numbers.
Well, Carol, Hamid has already said a couple of times a little bit about your history of the company, 114 years old. We know that change is hard for everybody, and especially for people working at a company that's a century old. You're also the first outsider to become CEO of UPS, and I'm sure that's had an impact of a different kind of thinking. What are you doing? And you said everything has to do with people. So what are you doing to motivate UPS employees and executives to try different things, to experiment more, and also to follow your lead?
Yeah. Well, some things have been more symbolic and some things have been more meaningful. On the symbolic side, we had policies that restricted facial hair for men and natural hair for African Americans. So if you wanted to wear a fro or a twist or a braid, you weren't allowed to. And we said, no, bring your authentic self to work. So we changed that policy. Our tattoo policy was more restrictive than the US Army. We thought, we can change that policy. So we changed that policy so people don't have to cover up their tats. Now they need to be respectful, but they don't have to cover them up. Just imagine trying to cover them up in the summertime when it's so hot. So those are symbolic moves, but people are like, really? And I'm like, really? We used to always wear, suit and ties, and now we can just dress for the event, whatever the event might be. So that's, I just want people to bring their real, genuine, authentic self to work. On the more meaningful side, I believe in building financial plans that you can make and then paying your people. And we've been paying our people. And money isn't everything, but it does not hurt. It does not hurt. And I'm really committed to that, investing in people so they can do well for their families. I think that's super important. And creating opportunities for people to reach their highest potential, whatever it may be. And it's different for each of us. But I'm spending most of my time on the people development side. I was retired. The only reason I came off of the retirement, and I was on my farm, but I came back because I'm like, I love to develop people. There are a lot of great people here at UPS. So having some fun doing that.
That's fantastic. We're going to talk more about that and leadership in a moment, but let's go back to Tracy Ward and see what else the audience is asking from our guests.
Great. Lots of questions have been rolling in, and I've got two that I'd love to share with you. Just on the topic of the innovation initiatives, I think perhaps a question for both of you. What are the paths and obstacles you encounter when you initiate change and innovation initiatives?
I can't wait to go first. I think organizations, particularly successful organizations who are leaders in their business and have a financial wherewithal to be, in their minds, bulletproof, that presents a unique challenge for change because there's no burning platform. I mean, everything's great. You're leading an industry. Every day you read in the paper that the company's doing fantastically well. So really the reasons for change are hard to articulate and to understand. And smart people need to understand why you're doing something before they sort of line up. And it just means that the job of the leader is to communicate. The other possibility is to create a burning platform, but I don't recommend that. I think explaining to smart people why you're doing this and how this is going to improve the company and the shareholder and their career growth, I think that's the trick. And we're doing a much better job of that than we were 2 or 3 years ago when we were just starting to do some of this stuff. In some of these arenas, also, there's no playbook. I mean, where do you go if you're at the leadership edge of your industry? Where do you go to figure out how to do things? So you got to be prepared to try different things. Some of them are not going to work. People are going to make mistakes, but that should be okay. You got to have the courage to get up and try different things until you find something that works. But the challenge has been bigger than I imagined, and we are in a business that arguably is one of the 2 oldest businesses in history. So it becomes even more challenging in that case.
Carol, what would you say?
Well, I couldn't agree more. Clarity in the message and constant communication. I also think simplification is important. I talked about our framework, better, not bigger. We also operationalize that through a customer-first, people-led, innovation-driven framework. And we have one metric for each of those pillars, just one. And we measure our progress against those metrics. And simplification is helpful when you're trying to drive change because otherwise it's just too much. It's over. It can be like a tidal wave.
Mhm. Tracy, you said there were 2 questions. So what's the second one?
Yes. What has been the biggest opportunity to come out of the pandemic for your company?
Hamid?
Sure. I think it crammed many years of transformation in the form of digitalization because you had to do it. There was no choice. So all of a sudden, we got a lot of things done that normally would have taken multiple years. And I think the secondary benefit of that was that the organization developed confidence that it can do pretty impossible things in a short period of time. So the improvements themselves were important, but I think the courage that it gave the organization to set more audacious goals, I think that was really valuable.
Carol, do you want to contribute something to that?
I can't say it any better than Hamid.
Oh, okay. All right. That's great. So let's move on because I want to wrap up our conversation. You sort of got us started. I want to talk a little bit more about leadership. And this whole series wants to deal with leadership issues. Let me start with you, Carol, on this. You know that the saying is a lot of clarity comes out of crisis because you get a roadmap of what needs to be done, what needs to be changed, what needs to be fixed, and sounds like that's what you're going through at UPS right now. As you think about all of the lessons that you've learned through the pandemic and also through this supply chain crisis, what would you say is the single most important leadership lesson that you learned, and how is it influencing the way that you're managing and leading UPS today?
Empathy. People have gone through a lot, and their families have gone through a lot, and our customers have gone through a lot. And so I read every single customer letter that comes to me. I read every single UPS email that comes to me. And I read it through an empathetic point of view, to put myself in their shoes, to understand where they're coming from and try to make it a better experience for them.
That's great. That's great. Hamid, can you top that? How is the pandemic and what you've learned, your experience, influencing the way you're running Prologis?
I think it's not changing how we're running Prologis that in a very significant way. We've always had the hierarchy of people first, hate to say it, Carol, but customers second and investors third. Because if you get that order right and you've got people that they know you have their back and you're taking care of them and they don't have to worry about those kinds of things, they'll go to the end of the earth for you. And if they do, when they do that, the customer will get a good experience and the shareholders will make boatloads of money. So I really want to punctuate what Carol said in that area. The other thing that I want to highlight is this business of better is better, not bigger is not better, better is better. This is really, really important. There are a lot of companies that set out size as an aspirational goal, and they usually want to get there no matter what, at whatever cost. I haven't seen those strategies be successful, but if you start from building a great organization from the ground up, and it's not easy and it's not quick, it will pay off in spades in the long term.
Let's get more leadership advice from both of you because, Hamid, you were saying that there was no playbook when you're in these crises like the pandemic and the supply chain case. And so I'm just wondering, as you've thought about all of this, what's the best leadership advice you have for the CEOs and executives in the audience on how to lead during a crisis? Carol?
Calmly. With humor, find an opportunity to laugh every day.
Have you been in any situation, let's just talk about UPS right now because you're still a newbie there. Have you been in a crisis situation beyond this macro thing that you're dealing with that you can give us an example of how you handled it?
Oh, I don't think we have enough time for that. In all seriousness, let your values guide your actions. In a crisis, rely on your values. values. Go back to home base. You know, on the very first day that I took the CEO job, it was the day after the weekend where George Floyd was killed. And I had put together a video that I was going to show the UPSers around the world, which was a pumped up, positive, this is what we're going to do. We're going to have some fun. We're going to kick some ass. And I'm like, I cannot possibly run this video because George Floyd was just killed. So I sat down on my kitchen table and I wrote a note about how I felt. And my note, it was that my anger, my shame, my sadness, and how in a time of this emotional turmoil, I was going to turn to my values and turn my anger into action by living our values. So that note that I penned actually ran before the video. And it really was helpful to me to actually mobilize me and how I thought I should act as a leader by staying really true to my values.
Well, that's a really good example. Hamid, you have been CEO during many crises. I'll just mention 9/11, the financial crisis, what we're going through right now, the pandemic. What would you say is the best leadership advice you can share with the audience on how to lead during a crisis?
You know, 2008 was really hard on our industry and on me and the company. And actually, one of the reasons Prologis exists is because of the challenges of 2008, because my company, AMB, after that merged with the Prologis and changed the name of the combined company to Prologis. So out of that crisis came a lot of the need for a lot of preparation. You got to have a bulletproof balance sheet because you never know. We live in a very unpredictable world, and you don't know what's going to happen. So preparation is really important. You already heard about communication. You got to communicate things until you're sick and tired of hearing yourself. One thing I'm really proud of is that internally during this COVID crisis, we had a SWAT meeting every day, every single day. The executive team of this company got together wherever they were, and we spent a half an hour talking about what do we do for this customer, how do we treat this situation, et cetera, et cetera. So being decisive is really, really important. And in a lot of big companies, people just do analysis and paralysis and all that. Sometimes just picking a direction and going, it doesn't have to be perfect. It has to be directionally correct. That's really important. I think in all those discussions, I'm really proud of the North Star that we use in having those discussions, because in those discussions, how our employees are being taken care of, that was really important. For example, just one thing we did is that for employees that had lost, first of all, we didn't fire anybody. We actually hired 25% more people during the crisis. But there were employees certainly that had their spouse had lost the job. We made loans available to them that we actually forgave. We offered our facilities for free to relief organizations. By the way, the funny thing is that we would offer them, and it would be really hard because of the bureaucracy for them to actually take us up on as many offers as we were making to them. But we did all the right things, and we put the economics aside of those decisions. And, lo and behold, the economics worked just fine. So you've heard it before. It's communication, it's preparation, it's putting people first. And this word used to be one of my favorite words, but it's been overused now a lot. But being authentic, what really is important to you, and making sure that your messages and your communication is totally aligned with that is really important, because people are pretty good at figuring out where the millimeter of daylight is between what you're talking about and what you're doing. And I'm really proud that this team did a fabulous job during COVID, and 2008 taught us a lot of great lessons for this one.
Those are all good. I hope people were taking notes on that. Thank you. That's a good note to end off on. Hamid, thank you so much. Carol, excellent comments from you. Thank you both so much. And I'm going to hand it back to Tracy.
Thank you.